I woke up before my alarm. No real reason. Just one of those mornings where the mind hits the ground before the body does and sleep decides it's done pretending. Luna stirred at the foot of the bed, letting out a soft sigh, and I reached down to rub behind her ears. She thumped her tail once, then settled again, content in the early silence. Tessa wasn't home. Not yet. The last I'd heard from her was a text late last night, something about barely any signal and might head back early if the roads are clear. She was up in the mountains with her team from work. A bonding trip or something. She'd mentioned it 2 weeks ago over coffee when her calendar was already full of other networking nights and corporate culture events. These things were her world now: conferences, off-sites, cold brew with interns. I rolled out of bed and shuffled toward the kitchen, still half asleep, thinking maybe I'd make some eggs. Or just coffee. Yeah, just coffee. That's when I saw them. Scattered across the kitchen counter, half curling from moisture in the air, printed photos. Real, physical ones. Like something out of a time capsule. No envelope. No note. Just there, waiting. I figured at first maybe they were from our anniversary trip we never really got around to organizing. Or that photo booth session we did at Amanda's wedding. But the first image I picked up sent something sharp and electric down my spine. Tessa, standing outside a tent. Her hair a little messy, cheeks flushed from the cold, laughing at something out of frame. Her arms were wrapped around someone. A man. They were close, too close. His head was ducked toward hers, his hands firm around her waist. Not a friendly pat or side hug. This was full body contact, early morning, no personal space kind of closeness. The tent behind them was half-zipped. The sun was just beginning to rise over the trees, casting the whole scene in a soft golden light. It should have looked innocent. Natural, even. But it didn't. There were 4 more photos. Different angles, maybe from a drone or someone standing at a distance. In one, they were exiting the tent together. In another, she had her head on his shoulder, laughing about something as he pointed at the horizon. I stared at them for what felt like forever, my mind already running at full speed but getting nowhere. I didn't know this guy. That's what kept bugging me. I've met most of her coworkers, even the new hires. I've heard the names, the stories. We used to talk about everything, about the people in our lives, the places we went, the weird stuff that happened at work. But not this. I had just picked up another photo, one where her hand was resting lightly on the guy's chest, when I heard the garage door open. I didn't have time to move. Didn't even try. I just stood there, photos in hand, staring at the door like it was about to answer every question in the universe. She stepped in a second later, brushing snow from her coat, boots still laced, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face lit up, surprised to see me. Hey, you're up early. I didn't say anything. Just held up the photo. She tilted her head, glanced at it, then tossed her keys on the counter like nothing was wrong. Oh, she said, casual as anything. One of the guys brought a drone. Took a bunch of photos. That morning was freezing, we were all jumping into each other's tents for warmth. She moved past me, opened the fridge, started digging for creamer. Seriously, she added, voice light, back turned, nothing weird. It was like 20 degrees. And his tent was closest. Still, I said nothing. She poured her coffee, stirring it slowly, then leaned against the counter across from me. Her eyes finally met mine. What? She asked, half smiling. You look like someone ran over your bike. I stared at her, unsure what I was even looking for. A twitch? A shift in tone? Something that gave her away? Just looks, in asterisk mate, I said, eventually setting the photo back down. She waved a hand. Yeah, I mean sure. It looks a certain way. But context, babe. Seriously. We were all freezing. You know how people huddle together when they're cold? Human instinct. Right, I said, though the words came out flatter than I meant. She tilted her head. You don't believe me? I didn't say that. But you're thinking it. There it was. That edge in her voice. Defensive, but just barely. Not quite sharp enough to sound alarmed. Practiced. Measured. As if she'd already anticipated this conversation and rehearsed it on the drive back. No, I said slowly. I'm just surprised. That's all. You never mentioned this guy. She shrugged, took another sip. Didn't think it mattered. It's not like I memorized the guest list. Half those people I barely know. I nodded, but something inside me didn't. Something stayed clenched. Still. Cold. I watched her as she unpacked her things, muddy hiking boots, a dented water bottle, a folded-up beanie. She moved through the house like someone without a single ounce of guilt. There was no hesitation. No shame. That should have comforted me. It didn't. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Too quietly. I took Luna for a walk. Tessa said she was going to take a shower, then nap. We barely spoke beyond the basics. No talk about the trip. No stories. No funny anecdotes about group mishaps or inside jokes. That's what made it worse. Usually, she'd come back from these things buzzing with stories. "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened," she'd say. Or, "We got lost and ended up eating cold chili out of a can at midnight." But today? Nothing. I couldn't shake it. Not the photos. Not her nonchalance. And not the way her voice never once cracked. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. I wanted to write it off as some misunderstanding, some drone guy with poor timing, some optical illusion that made everything look worse than it was. But something about it all, it stuck to me. Like frost you can't feel until your skin goes numb. Later, while she slept, I stared at the photos again. They were still there. Same angles. Same faces. Same story. And that chill, that cold, creeping unease? It hadn't gone anywhere. They say the human brain is wired to protect itself from pain. That we rewrite memories without even realizing it, smooth out the wrinkles, edit out the parts that don't fit the version of the story we want to believe. I think that's what I'd been doing. I'd been filling in the gaps with trust. I'd been assuming good intentions because the alternative was too hard to sit with. But the thing about hindsight is that it doesn't lie. It just waits for you to catch up. After that morning, after the photos, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was seeing everything for the first time, even the things I'd already lived through. Like when you hear the same song you've heard 100 times, but one day the lyrics finally hit and you realize it's not a love song at all. It's a funeral. The shift hadn't been sudden. That's what made it dangerous. It had crept in like fog, soft and slow and patient. By the time I noticed I couldn't see clearly, I was already surrounded. Tessa used to share everything with me. Her schedule, her coworkers' gossip, random thoughts about lunch. She'd text me pictures of her lunch if it looked weird or impressive. That stopped maybe 3 months ago. At first, I didn't think much of it. People get busy. Habits change. But now I look back and realize those silences weren't accidental. They were curated. Intentional. She started calling me less during the day. Used to be she'd ring me on her walk to the train or during coffee runs. Just short little check-ins. Hey, thinking of you kind of stuff. Then those calls dropped off too. Replaced by late texts, often with a reason attached, rough day, deadlines, or drained. I used to joke that I knew her calendar better than mine. Lately, I didn't even know which city she was in half the time. Conferences, retreats, strategy sessions, they blurred together. Every time I asked for specifics, she kept it light. "Oh, just the usual." And when I pressed a little harder, she'd laugh and say, "You really want to hear about digital optimization meetings?" It felt like she was always moving on calls, out the door, in a rush. Even when she was home, her energy wasn't. Her body was there, but her presence wasn't. And then there was the weekend trip. She was supposed to be visiting her sister. That's what she told me. I didn't ask a ton of questions, why would I? But I remember offering to drive her to the airport. She declined. Said her friend Nicole was picking her up because they were going early for breakfast. Seemed innocent enough. Until I checked the credit card statement a week later and saw a hotel charge from Boulder. A spa resort. It didn't match the city where her sister lived. I brought it up cautiously. "Oh, we changed plans last minute," she said with a quick nod. Nicole had points to use and I figured a little reset wouldn't hurt. It was such a casual answer tossed out like a gum wrapper. I nodded at the time, pretending to buy it. But later that night, I went back and checked the hotel site. There was only one room booked under her name. No mention of Nicole. Even Luna started picking up on the change. Our dog had always been more excited to see Tessa come home than anyone else. But lately, she'd barely lift her head from the rug when the door opened. Dogs know. I don't care what anyone says, they always know. And still, I said nothing. I buried it. Like a coward. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was tired. That relationships go through phases. But the truth was already knocking. It knocked the night I saw her smile at a text, then flip her phone over the moment I walked into the room. It knocked when I noticed that she now took her calls on the porch or in the car, anywhere but within *T. It knocked when she started sleeping in a little longer than usual, leaving me to walk Luna alone on weekends when that used to be our thing. And I let it knock. Over and over. I let it keep knocking until I couldn't pretend anymore. I started replaying every odd moment from the last 4 or 5 months like a highlight reel I didn't ask for. Her reaction when I asked to see was in her phone. Her hesitation before answering. "Just someone from procurement," she said. "We've been working on that client pitch I told you about." But she hadn't told me. Not really. Then there was the lunch bag incident. I'd accidentally grabbed her bag one day instead of mine. Took it to work, realized the mistake by noon, and texted her to apologize. She brushed it off, said she'd order something instead. But that night, I unpacked her bag and found a folded napkin with a note on it. Hope today's a little easier. You got this. No name. Just a doodle of a coffee cup with a smiley face. She told me it was from a coworker. We've all been writing little motivation notes to each other lately, she said, brushing it off. But I knew her handwriting. And that wasn't hers. It was little things like that. 100 little things. Each one so small you'd sound crazy saying it out loud. But together, they painted something clear. And cold. And real. She changed her passwords. Not just on her laptop, but on our shared streaming services, too. Netflix asked me to re-enter the login a couple weeks ago, and when I asked her for it, she said she must have updated it after a security alert. I believed her. I always believed her. Until I realized the password change wasn't for safety, it was for distance. She wasn't trying to protect her accounts. She was trying to protect her narrative. I started checking timestamps on everything. Our shared location services were still active, probably by accident, but they told a different story than her words. Times when she said she was at the office, she wasn't. Once, I saw her location ping from a condo complex across town. Just sitting there for 2 hours on a Thursday night. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. I already knew. And maybe the hardest part of all of this is how long it took me to admit what was right in front of me. Not just the signs, but what they meant. Because signs are useless if you keep lying to yourself about what they point to. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of facing how long I'd already lost her. There was one night, maybe 3 weeks ago, when I got up at 2 a.m. and found her on the couch. She said she couldn't sleep. She looked up at me, hair a mess, wrapped in a blanket, eyes glassy from the TV glow. She asked if I wanted tea. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. For a moment, I saw the version of her I'd fallen in love with, the one who used to sit with me on that same couch and talk for hours about everything and nothing. But that version wasn't real anymore. Or maybe she was, and I just wasn't part of the audience for it. I stood there, looked at her, and said, "No, I'm good." Then I went back upstairs. That night, I lay awake until morning, staring at the ceiling and listening to every sound in the house. Her footsteps. The creak of the stairs. The closing of the bathroom door. And something else I couldn't name. A silence so deep it made my chest ache. I didn't need proof anymore. I just needed to decide what I was going to do with the truth. Because I knew. I knew she was living a life parallel to mine. One with different rules, different stories, and someone else's name whispered into the dark. And if I kept pretending not to notice, then maybe I was just as guilty. I didn't go looking for it at first. I want to make that clear. I wasn't one of those people who snooped through their partner's messages or planted spyware or hacked into email accounts. I believed that if you had to go looking for evidence, then the relationship was already broken, maybe not shattered yet, but fractured in ways that matter. But beliefs are easy when trust is whole. And mine wasn't. It started with a tablet. An old iPad, forgotten in the back of the bedroom drawer. We used to keep it in the kitchen for recipes and streaming music while we cooked, but it hadn't been used in months. Tessa had upgraded to a newer device, and this one had just faded into the background. I only pulled it out because Luna had knocked my phone off the counter and cracked the screen. I needed to check a few emails while waiting for the repair, so I figured I'd log in on the tablet and get through the basics. What I didn't expect, what hit me like a gut punch I never saw coming, was that the device was still logged into Tessa's cloud account. Her photos. Her voice memos. Her app backups. Everything was synced. At first, I hesitated. I stared at the screen for a full minute, thumb hovering over the icon like it burned. I told myself to back out, close it, pretend I didn't see anything. But I didn't. Because by then, the truth had already started to rot under my skin, and I needed to know just how deep it went. I opened the photo gallery first. Most of it was ordinary *TS, selfies, work event snaps. But then I found a folder titled C. Just a single letter. Hidden in plain sight. Inside were 47 photos. Some were blurry, taken quickly, like she was sneaking a moment between meetings. Others were painfully clear. Her on a rooftop bar, leaning into a man with dark hair and a sharp jawline. Him kissing her cheek while she grinned like they were in their own little world. Them clinking glasses. Walking hand in hand down a cobblestone alley that I didn't recognize. They weren't just candid *TS, they were memories. Documented, curated, saved. There was one photo, just one, that undid me completely. It was her in bed. Sheets tangled, her hair spread across the pillow, sunlight through the blinds. She wasn't posing. It was caught mid-laugh, mid-sentence maybe. But her eyes, they were soft in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him. That's when I checked the timestamps. One was from the same weekend she was supposedly visiting her sister. Another overlapped with that mountain trip, the one she returned from early, acting like nothing happened. I couldn't breathe. I closed the photos, tried to collect myself. My hand was shaking. Next, I opened the Notes app. Another synced surprise. Inside was a draft, never sent, of a letter to him. To Colin. Last night felt like the kind of memory you don't realize is your favorite until it's already over. I know this is complicated. I know I've made it worse. But when I'm with you, I feel like myself again. I stopped reading. I didn't need to read more. I already knew. Colin. See, the man in the tent. The man at the rooftop. The man I'd never met but had unknowingly made room for in my own life, in my house, in the silence that had taken root between Tessa and me. I found the text messages next. Not just through iMessage, but in an app I'd never seen her use before. Probably because it wasn't for public conversations, it was a team chat app, something companies use to coordinate. But their thread wasn't about projects or client strategy. It was private. In asterisk mate. I wish I could wake up next to you just once without checking the clock. I think about that morning on the trail every night. Use the card. I'll handle it. That last one made my stomach turn. I went straight to our shared credit card portal. Sure enough, there it was, an order from a boutique wine service shipped directly to Colin's address. Same street I'd seen pinged on the location tracker weeks ago. Same city where she'd said she was too busy for dinner. She'd used our money. Our account. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. Receipts, reservations, rideshare logs, e-tickets. I started collecting it all. Every digital breadcrumb, every careless oversight. I backed it up, organized the files into folders, **, TS, audio, transaction records. I labeled the main folder simply, Truth. And then I sat on the floor of the bedroom for a long time, just staring at it all. You think you'll cry when you find out. Or rage. Or break something. But I didn't. I just went numb. It was a quiet devastation, like snow falling over a collapsed roof. The damage had already been done. I was just finally seeing it in daylight. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. Instead, I started to prepare. I became surgical. Focused. Detached. I started pulling boxes out of the attic, emptying drawers, taking photos off the wall. I created a checklist of what was hers, what was mine, and what needed to go. I contacted a friend who worked in law and asked for a referral. I booked a meeting. I kept everything quiet. I was done playing defense. One evening, Tessa asked if I wanted to go out for dinner. Just us, she said. Feels like we haven't connected in a while. I looked up at her and forced a smile. Maybe next week. She nodded, almost relieved by my refusal. As if she didn't really want me to say yes. That same night, I printed out the most damning pieces of evidence and placed them in a folder. The hotel invoice. The wine delivery. A few select **, TS. Nothing graphic. Nothing emotional. Just facts. On the cover page, I wrote, I know. That was it. I didn't leave it on the bed. I didn't throw it in her face. I waited. 3 days later, she left for another work dinner. While she was gone, I packed her things folded, sorted, neat. I left them by the front door. The folder was placed on the table beneath the framed photo of us from our second anniversary. I considered taking the photo down, but I left it. I wanted her to see what she'd traded for what she had now. When she walked in and saw the empty closet, the stacked boxes, and the envelope on the table, she froze. Landon, she said softly. What is this? I didn't answer. Because by then she already knew. I didn't watch her read the folder. I couldn't. I was upstairs, sitting on the edge of the guest bed, listening to the sound of boxes being shuffled, her footsteps pausing, the slight tremble of the envelope as it was opened. You think you'd want to be there for that moment, the reveal, the confrontation, the apology, maybe even a breakdown. But I'd already lived the storm. I didn't need to stand in the rain. There was no yelling. No thrown objects. Just silence. When I finally came downstairs, she was standing by the dining table, the open folder in her hand, one of the pages trembling ever so slightly. She looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something unguarded in her face. Not guilt. Not shame. Not even regret. Just awareness. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I nodded once. Then don't. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I watched as she looked at the boxes near the front door, the coat she'd left hanging on the rack, the now empty hooks where her keys used to be. She was realizing it wasn't a threat or an argument. It was done. You're not going to talk about it? She asked, as if she couldn't believe I'd skipped the script, the part where I demand answers and she offers curated half-truths designed to manage fallout, not fix damage. No, I said. I already talked to myself about it for weeks. She blinked, caught off guard by the honesty. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. That line, the classic refrain. I felt a flash of something anger, maybe, but it passed quickly. Like a match that flares and dies before lighting anything around it. I know, I said calmly. That's part of the problem. For a moment, she didn't move. Just stood there, folder still in hand, like maybe if she stayed still enough, time would pause with her. But eventually, she walked toward the door, slowly, like each step pulled something heavier than her own weight. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Didn't ask if we could talk later. And I didn't stop her. As she crossed the threshold, Luna barked from the back hallway. Tessa turned briefly, her eyes flickering toward the sound. I saw something crack in her expression then, something soft, almost human, but it passed just as fast. The door closed. And that was it. The first thing I did after she left wasn't cry or drink or text someone. I cleaned the counter, washed the coffee mugs, took out the trash. There was something sacred about the mundane right then, like restoring order, one small act at a time. But the silence that followed, it was different. Not peaceful. Not even sad. It was sterile. Like a hospital waiting room after visiting hours. I moved through the days like a ghost. I went to work. I answered emails. I took Luna on her morning walks. From the outside, nothing looked different. But internally, everything had shifted. And that's when the messages started coming in. At first, they were harmless. A text from Tessa's friend Melanie, "Hey, is everything okay? Tessa said you two were taking a break." Then one from her cousin, "Sorry to hear about what happened. Hope you're holding up. Just know you're not alone." Then came the social media posts. Photos of Tessa smiling under string lights. Quotes about healing and choosing joy. Captions like, "Growth isn't always pretty, but it's necessary." She posted a black and white photo of Luna, our dog, and captioned it, "Missing my girl." Shared love doesn't always get a say. It was subtle. Just enough to imply sadness, just enough to cultivate sympathy. The comments poured in. "You deserve peace. You're so strong. Some people just don't know how to love deeply." She was already rewriting the story. And she was good at it. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend, Josh. We hadn't spoken in a while, but he was always neutral, the kind of guy who kept out of drama. "She's saying you were distant," he said quietly. "That you checked out months ago." I didn't respond. What was there to say? If someone wants to be the victim in their own version of events, there's no stopping them. Especially when they've had a head start. Josh continued awkwardly. "I just wanted to ask, is that true?" I took a long breath before answering. "You ever watch a dam crack, Josh?" He hesitated. "I guess. It doesn't happen all at once. It's just pressure. Microfractures. And everyone on the outside thinks it broke in a day. But it started long before the collapse. You just couldn't see it until the water rushed in." He went quiet. We didn't speak again after that. I started withdrawing from mutual circles, not dramatically, just gradually. I stopped attending events. I muted group chats. I needed space. I needed clean lines between my old life and whatever was supposed to come next. And still, Tessa kept posting. A new job title. A soft launch of her creative rebrand. Photos of her with colleagues, maybe one of them was Colin, but I didn't look closely enough to confirm. Then came the quote. "Some endings are just the start of your truest self. I choose light. Always." That one stung. Not because it was accurate, but because it was effective. She knew how to tell a story that people wanted to hear, how to paint herself as the one who tried, who suffered, who finally had to walk away from someone emotionally unavailable. What she didn't say was that I had to peel the truth off the walls of our shared life like old wallpaper. I never responded. Not publicly. Not in DMs. Not to the whispers. Instead, I compiled everything: texts, photos, receipts, voice memos, and put them into a secure drive. I titled it simply, Legal. When I met with my attorney, Rachel, she didn't even flinch. She'd seen this before. "I assume she'll want to split assets," she said, skimming through the files. "Are you seeking compensation or ownership on the house?" "No," I said. "She can have it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I just want Luna." She smiled faintly. "You'll get her. Courts tend to side with primary caretakers." "You have documentation?" I pulled out vet records, adoption forms, feeding logs. Rachel chuckled. "Okay, I stand corrected, you came prepared." But the prep didn't stop the fallout. 2 weeks later, I received a cease and desist letter from Tessa's legal team. Allegations of boundary violations. Claims of emotional intimidation. An accusation that I had accessed her data without consent. Rachel reviewed the letter, her expression unreadable. "She's not trying to protect herself," she said finally. She's protecting a version of herself. I nodded. That tracks. Rachel leaned back. You've been calm through all of this. You haven't retaliated. You haven't engaged online. That's going to matter. I didn't tell her how many drafts I'd written and deleted. How many emails I'd stared at without hitting send. How many times I'd fantasized about sending everyone in our orbit the *TS. The receipts. The audio of Tessa whispering Colin's name like it was a secret prayer. But I didn't. Because at some point it wasn't about justice anymore. It was about being done. And I was. When the divorce paperwork came in the mail, I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the counter for 2 days untouched. Like a wound I didn't want to bandage just yet. But when I finally did, I read every line carefully. It was sterile. Empty. No apology clause. No confession page. Just lines and numbers. Assets and agreements. The outline of a life dismantled piece by piece. I signed. And just like that, we were no longer we. We were signatures on a document. We were time-stamped history. We were noise fading into the background. But I still had Luna. And for now, that was enough. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional. It's loud. Messy. Reactive by nature. It gives away power. And I'll admit, at first, I wanted to react. To fire off a post that would bury every lie. To forward *TS to every person who had liked her photos captioned, "Sometimes you have to leave to find yourself." I wanted people to know what really happened. But then I sat with it. And the longer I sat, the less it made sense to hand her the drama she'd already framed me for. So I didn't react. I responded. The cease and desist letter was nothing but noise, an attempt to provoke me into doing exactly what she wanted, act impulsively. If I lashed out, I became the villain. If I stayed silent, I became the ghost in her carefully edited story. But if I responded strategically with facts, not fire, then I owned the truth. Rachel and I went through the letter line by line. Allegations of digital surveillance, unauthorized data access, and a vague statement about emotional manipulation that read like it had been pulled from a therapy blog. Is this her team or her? I asked. Rachel smirked. This isn't legal strategy. This is reputation management. She was right. It wasn't about protecting her. It was about sculpting an image. Damage control not for the marriage, but for her social and professional standing. She wasn't fighting for truth. She was scrubbing for optics. I'll handle the response, Rachel said, tapping her pen. But I want to be thorough. You said you had evidence. I want all of it. So I gave her the drive. Every *T, file, text thread, date-stamped location log. I even included the chat transcripts from her work app, every time-stamped moment that contradicted her timeline. All labeled, indexed, and collated. You sure you're not a lawyer? Rachel said, half joking as she scrolled through the folders. No, I said. Just a husband who had time to think. She nodded, her tone shifting. Good. Because this isn't emotional fuel. This is a paper wall she can't climb. It was strange, watching the narrative flip in such a sterile setting. Courtrooms, mediation memos, recorded calls. But there was a sense of calm in the process. Control I hadn't felt in months. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just truth. And I held it quietly. While Rachel filed the necessary motions, I took a step back from everything else. Social media, group chats, even old friends. I didn't need outside noise clouding what I knew. The people who mattered, the ones who truly wanted to know what happened, they reached out respectfully. They didn't pry. They listened. Others didn't. I got a message one night from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. A guy Tessa used to work with who always struck me as the smile too wide type. The message was short. Hey man, sorry about everything. If you ever want to talk or hear what she's been telling people, hit me up. I didn't respond because I already knew. I didn't need a breakdown of the new narrative. I'd seen the seeds she'd been planting for months. The passive quotes about growth. The photos of her journaling beside sunsets. The vague but pointed captions. Sometimes people only love you when you're broken enough to need them. Subtle. Smooth. Dangerous. But it didn't shake me. Because every time I looked at the folder on my desktop, every time I saw her name beside his in timestamp certainty, I remembered what I was fighting for. Not revenge. Not reputation. But freedom. And Luna. We had a custody hearing scheduled, not officially called that, but that's what it was. Tessa had requested shared time with Luna, citing emotional attachment and routine disruption. Her legal team argued that removing Luna from Tessa's life would create undue distress and emotional hardship. Rachel read the motion and looked at me. "Do you want to fight this?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Luna wasn't a possession. She wasn't leverage. She was family. And I wasn't going to let Tessa keep one foot in the door using a dog we both knew she hadn't walked in 3 months. The court reviewed vet records, daily care logs, even time-stamped photos of Luna's medication schedule. Rachel presented everything with precision. Tessa's team brought in emotion. Phrases like emotional support and mutual companionship. But the judge didn't need much time. "Primary caretaker privileges remain with the respondent," she said simply. That night, I walked Luna through the neighborhood with a different kind of weight off my shoulders. It was quiet, but not hollow. And for the first time, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder and wonder what version of me was being written somewhere else. I just walked. After that, the rest of the legal proceedings became technical. I let Rachel handle most of it. She negotiated asset division swiftly. Tessa pushed for half of the shared savings account, but didn't contest the house. I'd already told Rachel I didn't want it. The walls felt too heavy, too loud with memory. I signed over the deed. No fight. "You're giving her the house and the car," Rachel said. "Sure you're okay with that?" "She can have the geography," I replied. "I've got the map." It wasn't about holding on. It was about letting go on purpose. Meanwhile, Tessa's post shifted in tone. Less poetic, more pointed. One caption read, "Sometimes people will let you go without even trying, and that says more than any fight ever could." I almost laughed. She was still talking to an audience I wasn't part of anymore. And that was fine. Let her keep painting. I was done giving her paint. There was a moment, 2 months post-filing, when I saw her name pop up on my phone. Not a call. Just a notification from a shared calendar we forgot to disconnect. "Luna's birthday," it read. I stared at it for a while. Then I deleted the event. Because Luna's birthday wasn't a shared day anymore. It was mine. Rachel emailed the final settlement documents with a subject line that just read, "Complete." The file name was a sterile alphanumeric code. No emotion. No mention of the past 5 years. Just numbers, terms, and signatures. I opened the document and skimmed it again, even though I didn't need to. It ended the way all legal things do. Formally. Finally. There was no dramatic finale. No last-minute plea. No airport chase apology. Just digital ink and server confirmation. And in a way that made it real. I took a breath. Not a big one. Not theatrical. Just the kind you don't notice until you realize you've been holding your chest tight for months. The next morning, I went to the coffee shop on Main, the one Tessa never liked because it was too bland. I brought Luna, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window. A couple sat nearby, laughing about something on their phones. A dog barked from the sidewalk. Someone dropped their order, and the barista offered a replacement with a smile. It was all normal. Perfectly, refreshingly normal. I didn't post about it. Didn't need to. This part of my life wasn't for sharing anymore. It was for living. I left the city a week after everything finalized. Aspen wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. The kind of quiet I didn't know I needed. I found a small rental near the edge of town, close to where I used to train on the slopes as a teenager. My new job was remote, consulting on software systems, and the solitude suited me. I walked Luna early every morning, sometimes before sunrise. That air? It didn't carry memories. I deleted old photos, changed passwords, canceled every account that still had her name. Healing didn't show up as a moment, it came in fragments. Clean desk. A day without checking her socials. A night where I actually slept. It wasn't fast, but it was mine. 5 months passed. One evening, I got a message from an unknown number. "Do you ever think about us?" I didn't reply. It wasn't me she missed. It was the version of herself she felt powerful in. I wasn't angry. I was done. The truth had burned everything false to ash, and from that I rebuilt, not with noise,